Welcome, everybody. I'm here today with one of the most esteemed scientists in the world today. His name is David Sereda of Lightstream Harmonics. It's a place where art, science, and spirituality meet. We're going to be talking for 45 minutes about crystals and his connections with NASA and the Tesla Foundation that he set up in LA, restructured water in the cells of our body, and how even Nikola Tesla in 1900 proved that radio waves travel faster than the speed of light by a factor of 1.618. This is the golden measure. So sit back and enjoy our conversation. We're going to just talk about the enigma of phi, 1.618. Welcome, David.
All this talk about the golden ratio, I went into nature with a measuring tape and also with the body. And the body is nature. I mean, we're part of it. And I wanted to see if the golden ratio 1 to 1.618, 0339887, and just like pi, the golden ratio is ever expanding in the Fibonacci sequence. It doesn't ever produce a finite ratio. In fact, some of the earliest ratios, like 1 and 1 is 1 to 1, and 1 to 2 is 1 to 2, and 2 to 3, and 3 to 5, 3 to 5 is 1.1 to 1.6666. And as you go up in the sequence, you get more and more refined at 1.61803398887, and it just keeps going. Yeah. Yeah, there's the sequence. And what is amazing in nature is you will see all of Fibonacci's approximations in natural measurements. You won't see 1 to 1.618 everywhere. Like you'll see 1 to 1.5857. In fact, at Johns Hopkins University, they did a study on the human skull. I'll turn myself sideways, measuring from right here, the bridge of the nose, to the soft spot on the top of the head, and the soft spot from the top of the head to the back of the base of the skull. And in this study, they found the different humans ranged between 1 to 1.5758 to 1 to 1.6 and etc. So we weren't all the same. And they measured mammalian species, you know, lions and dolphins, even in different mammalian species on the earth, and found that the humans were the closest to 1.618 overall the species, which is quite interesting. So the very fact that
Fascinating.
the structure of the head will fall
Yeah.
somewhere in Fibonacci's progressive expanding phi. So what have you found in your measurements in nature? Do they confirm?
Well, I was looking at an MRI of my daughter had a brain scan about 20 years ago, and when I looked at the top-down view of the brain, even though it was like rounded from the top, it actually fitted into a perfect golden rectangle. So the rectangle that the shape, the ovular shape, fitted into was 1 to 1.618. But I just wanted to say, for those who've never heard of the golden ratio, when you say 1.618033, it's not actually a number. I think it represents something like an ordeal because it's based on the relationship between two successive Fibonacci numbers like 8 to 5, 13, 21 to
Yeah.
13. So it's not actually a number. It's kind of like a heavenly plane. It's like a plateau because we don't actually see 1.618 in nature, as you said. So it's because people say, oh, it doesn't actually equal that exactly. So when you're talking about that experiment, I think that's an average over like 1,000 people or so.
Yeah,
So
here's the website where Journal of the Journal of Craniofacial Surgery, Mammalian Skull Dimensions and the Golden Ratio. And this is the abstract here. And this would be one of the figures here, right
yes,
here, of the measurements that I just mentioned on the human skull. And they found here that they would be, I'm just looking for the, yeah, 1 to 1 point, no, this is the goal is 1 to 1.61803, but what they actually found in the study with different species is variations of that, right? And
Right.
cranial ratios here, see tiger, lion, rhesus monkey, domestic dog, etc. You see
Yeah.
human 1 to 1.64, right? Um,
Right.
1 to 1.57, between 1 to 1.64 and 1.57. The lion was 1.74 to 1.36, tiger 1.77, rhesus monkey 1.86, domestic
Yeah.
dog. I mean, the domestic dog varies greatly, 1 to 1.12 to 1.91, etc. So that's
Yeah.
the point is, if you look in Fibonacci sequences, they span a lot of ratio territory.
Yeah. So that's interesting about looking at DNA because I just did a little deep dive into chromosomes, and we've been told that there's 23 human chromosomes in every cell, but there's some new scientists saying that they're saying that a few million years ago, that we originally had 24 chromosomes and that two of the telomeres kind of merged and the 24 became 23. But we originally had 24 chromosomes like gorillas, monkeys, and all that. So there's some new research coming out. And I've always had this epiphany. The reason why I'm talking about 24 chromosomes is that I've done a lot of work with digital compression, which is like a modulus mathematics where we like, for people who don't know what modulus maths is, it's like if we have 24-hour time and we say the time is 14 o'clock, we take away 12 and we know it's 2 p.m. So in the same way, we look at the remainders of certain numbers after, say, base 9. So if I was to take these Fibonacci numbers here, so it goes
Yeah.
one, one, two, three, it goes forever, like you said. But I can reduce all those Fibonacci numbers by taking away the number 9 from each one of these numbers here. Like, so it's this row here, and the bottom row is when we take away the number 9, we end up with a repeating 24 pattern. So that infinitely repeating 24 pattern, which is why I'm talking about 24 chromosomes, we go 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 4, 3, 7, 1, 8, 9. But as it keeps going, we notice that all the vertical pairs add up to 9. So 12 pairs of 9 add up to 108. But but it's actually a 108 pattern plus 9. It's 108 plus 9. But if we were to start the sequence back here from not 1 but 0, and if we started this sequence again, it exactly adds up to the number 108. So firstly, I just wanted to ask, does modulus maths, or what I call digital reduction or digital compression, does that come up in your work with physics and
Oh yeah, no,
harmonics?
I always look at, like, I look at leftover angle numbers. I look at um always the leftover number of what we would call a whole or a whole sequence,
Yeah, yeah,
because that's how you see your ratio, right?
yes,
Between leftovers, and so there is no such a number doesn't really stand alone ever.
that's right.
It's in a synthesis in a harmonic, like even the Great Pyramid of Egypt. It's 51 degrees and 51 minutes and 14.3 seconds, and the leftover is 38 point something.
Mm,
And it actually varies because there are three pyramids on the Giza plateau whose angle
yeah,
slightly changes because they're chasing something in the heavens above. So in ancient Egypt, the 38 to 39 degrees, which is where your leftover is from pyramid angle,
mhm,
51.85
yeah,
is when you convert
from
it to
90
digital,
degrees. Yeah,
right? Your leftover is the resurrection angle known to the ancient Egyptians, and a degree of angle is a single day in a 360-degree orbit of the Earth around the sun. It's almost exactly one day. Of course, we have 365.256, and the decimals keep going days per year. So when you look at the fact that the way you build the pyramid angle is you take a rectangle, side A times side B is 1 to 1.618. And you take that rectangle and you fold your corners together to form a triangle inside of a golden rectangle, and it's 51 degrees and 51 minutes in
That's
14.3
good. I
seconds.
didn't
So
know that.
that the pyramid angle is proportional to the phi ratio rectangle. And the pyramid
So when
angle
we can,
left over is 38 to 39 degrees.
so when you're talking about the number 432, when I'm bringing that back to 432. So when
Yeah,
we convert that pyramid angle from 51.84
yeah.
degrees and multiply that 60 minutes and then 60 seconds. So we're really multiplying 51.84 by 3,600. You get 186,000 seconds, which is an important number as the speed of light in miles per second, but it's the square root of that number is what number multiplied by itself gives you 186,624. And that, as you know, is
432. It's 432.
432 squared. So I love the way how all that fits in. And another factor with 432 is that um, I forgot who did the research, but someone blew up the pyramid to the size of the Earth in the northern hemisphere. So if we could actually enlarge the pyramid, we'd want to know by what factor do we enlarge the pyramid so it fits the circumference of the Earth, and the ratio was 1 is to 43,200. So as you know, in harmonic maths, we can drop the zeros. So for 43,200 seconds is what is the number of seconds in a day. So somehow there's a connection between the pyramids and time. I wonder if you wanted
Well,
to
it's actually
elaborate.
the when Jesus says he went under for 3 days and 3 nights, it's uh it's 432,000. Let
Oh,
me just get my calculator out here. So you go
is
to,
that his 3 days in the cave? Was
yeah,
that
so
what you're
three
referring to?
days
Yeah.
times 24 hours is 72 hours times 60 minutes per hour is 4,320 minutes for 3 days.
Wow, that's beautiful.
You see, so
That,
he's even speaking in the same language because that's the amount of time that he went under, right?
right. And while we're talking about 432, I want to link that back to 108 because the 432 divided by 3 is 108 degrees. I mean, I have this on if I could share the screen, but I could just show this image here. We've been told at school that that's oxygen and the two hydrogen, that's water molecule. So we've been told that traditionally that angle here, the water bond angle is what 104 degrees point 5. But research has been done to show that these two bonds here are actually like a hinge, and when they open up, when they're like glacial water, when it's restructured, it can hit that angle here can go from 104.5 to 108, and that we call that the pentagon angle. So that's a harmonic or a ratio of the 432 that you're talking about. So is that what we call superstructured water when we see water based on the pentagram? Is that
No, absolutely. So, and that
yeah,
pentagram, interestingly, um,
yeah.
it is, I mean, again, it's all about the angles, what as above, so below. So when you see the angles in nature in a crystalline form, you look above to see what is ordaining the below as a mirrored kind of reflection. You see, so Khufu's pyramid, when you convert degrees, minutes, and seconds, is 51.853972. Khafre's pyramid, 51.84. Menkar's pyramid, 51.34. Now, when you look at your leftovers, starting with Khufu, 90 degrees minus 51.853972 is 38.146, right? 028.
Mhm.
And Khafre's
Right.
pyramid, 90 degrees minus 51.84 leaves 38.16. But when we get into Menkar's pyramid, 90 degrees minus 51.34, we're almost at 39 degrees, 38.65 degrees. So
Awesome.
this progression
Yeah.
suggest, as above, so below, that they
Mm,
keep building another pyramid because of precession. We're looking at slight shifts, which in what they're actually observing, rising in the east, coming up. So from 90 degrees, it's between 38 and
mm,
39 degrees, but from 0 degrees north, it's 51.34 degrees at this point. But that would mean we've missed something completely in the purpose of the pyramids, because it's traditionally believed that they're looking through the angle of the descending and ascending passage at 26 to 26.3 degrees. And those passages also shift ever so slightly. But the point of all this
right,
is that the golden ratio would also have to shift very, very slightly in all three pyramids. Because if you build a rectangle, side A times 1.618, and fold your corners in, you get your slope angle of your Great Pyramid.
mm,
You see? So that would
okay.
mean that the golden ratio, again, we know it's not finite. It's the
Yeah.
mathematical sequence that Fibonacci gave us gives us. I don't like the word approximation because it's way better than approximation. It's just
Yeah.
there's no way mathematics can mimic the mysteries of nature precisely. There's
Yeah.
always leftover.
Yeah. So that's why it's an ideal.
It's an ideal,
You
yeah.
reminded me of, while we're talking about the pentagram, you reminded me of, and there's another colleague of ours, my friend who took me to New York, Roger Green, he introduced me to some teachers out there like Scott Olson, and I had some in chats with Scott Olson, like I am with you, and he worked out that when you keep drawing the pentagram within the pentagram within the pentagram, that's called an iteration. At four iterations, there's a special angle when you go, it's not right into the center as they miniaturize, they can go forever. That's why it's an ordeal that
Right.
we actually never reach that the point. I guess it's an implosion point. But this angle here, from that arm to that b base there to there, is 137 degrees. So I wrote that down somewhere. Um, Anyway, yeah. So the golden angle here is 137 degrees. Um, does that fit into your work with the what they call the fine structure constant? Um, like scientists are obsessed, like we're obsessed about say 108 or 432, but a lot of physicists, when they hear the word 137, it's the reciprocal. The reciprocal of that, I think, is 0.007, the James Bond number, 007. But they just go completely wild when they see that golden. That's the angle here. That's the 137-degree angle when you divide 360
Yeah.
degrees by 1.618. So I was just wondering your thoughts on
Well, I
does that
actually
number
haven't
come up?
looked at, I know what the fine structure constant, the goal of it is, and but I tend to really focus on a particular area of research until I'm done with it, and then I move on to something else. And right
Right.
now, my newest work is looking at these sacred angles coming out of the Giza pyramids and where they lead to.
Yes.
Because as above, so below, I'm looking for what they were really looking for in the heavens above, and I don't think we found it. Um,
Right.
using
So you're like a pioneer, but instead of pi, you're a
No, I'm both.
pioneer.
Definitely both.
Yes, pi.
Looking
Yeah.
at pi, see pi. Let's go to the. Are you familiar with the Archimedes spiral?
Yes. Yes.
Archimedes really is really the father of physics.
So while you're
Archimedes.
finding that the pyramid is the only known structure we believe that contains both pi and phi, is that where we're going?
Yeah, it is.
It's
It contains both. Absolutely. So look at the arc. In a way, pi is the resolution of a closed circle, and phi is the resolution exploration of the spiral, which is the open circle, right? So here's your Archimedean spiral. There's a whole
Yes.
page on it on Wikipedia. But actually,
Yep.
what happened to me is many years ago, this was in the year 2000, I had I went through this period after I started receiving these blinding apparitions of Christ in that began on October 19th, 1994. And I got the ability, without going too much into that experience, because I could spend a lot of time there, I started to be able to see through my third eye spiritual beings perfectly clearly. And so then one afternoon, which was early January 2000 at the Millennium, I'm just looking for my notes here on this, and all of a sudden Nikola Tesla appears to me in the afternoon with two other beings shining with light. I saw this with my eyes open in Canada, and he gave me this, which is called the galaxy clock. And the galaxy clock really goes beyond the Archimedean spiral concept. In fact, there's
Mm.
let me just pull up the phase one of the clock. The phase one of the
Mm.
clock here on the left. Can you see two of them or just one?
I'm just seeing one.
Okay, you're just seeing one clock. So I have to click on, you have to do them one at a time. So this is clock
Okay.
number one. And the way these work is, and Tesla actually just flashed this whole thing into my mind. Each
Mm.
of these enormous wheels or circles, the one I'm counting counterclockwise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 to here. And that's the distance light travels per second in each one of these
Mm.
clicks. And as the circles get smaller and smaller and smaller, we join the second line to each other, and slowly space and time starts to bend and curve.
Mm.
You can see the number one position is Einstein's the speed of light squared. But actually, what starts to happen in the clock is light starts to stretch in connecting seconds, which are bonded by an actual unknown force. And they slowly, let me go to my second clock, start to break the speed of light, which happens in my second clock. And the the presentation geometrically shows the birth of the Fibonacci spiral, the golden ratio spiral.
Right.
But it's
Yeah.
actually progressive because I'm only at 24 seconds in the clock on the outer wheel, but my inner wheel here has gone, I actually have to calculate it because I haven't done this in years, has broken the speed of light by at least 3 times. But so as
Right.
I go further and further around the clock, the progression and the curvature of the spiral will
Mm.
deepen. But interestingly, it will always remain golden within the golden ratio. And
It
so
looks
this
very
will
similar to a
actually,
diagram.
sorry, what?
It looks very similar to a diagram that was done by Professor Callum Coates. He translated all of Victor Schauberger's books, and they did lots of vortex spirals like this. And they talked about a formula like n times 1 on n, something whole times its reciprocal equals 1. It was a universal formula, and it led to all this hyperbolic curves. And so, this very diagram, I've seen something very similar in Callum Coates' books on the science of water because that fits in with the vorticity of how water flows. It's a universal geometry.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it's interesting because when you take the measurement that light travels per second on each one of these ticks, you can already see that your square is changing shape when you connect all your second hands, right? So
Right.
I'm just connecting second number one, second number two on all the wheels, second number
Mm-hmm.
three. And by the time I get to second number 24, it will,
Mm.
the second hand will cross the gravity's force, space, and timeline, and the
Right.
distance it will travel will be far greater
Mm.
than the speed of light in that 1 second
Mm.
as
That's amazing. So,
space gets more and more curved. So this is showing that, see, right now, gravity traditionally travels at the same speed as the speed of light. But that's because we're only looking at Einstein's formula of, let me share it again, the speed of light
yeah.
squared. No, that's the wrong clock. The speed of light squared will actually show that gravity is traveling at, here it is. I keep clicking on the wrong one. I
Mm.
keep clicking on the wrong one. Oh no, I'm clicking on the right one. There it is. So the speed of
Okay.
light squared mathematics, this is how myopic Einstein's formula is. It's just the red square. That's all it is. But if
Right.
he put the speed of light on this clock, you would find, and in fact, physicists have seen in the center of galaxies where this formation occurs here in my phase 2 clock, they have seen light ejecting through the center of what is hypothetically the black hole go multiple times the
Mm.
speed of light. And yes, you can
Right.
actually, the further away you get from a vent, you can actually see something going faster than the speed of light using atomic clocks, but also at a distance, you can witness something going faster than the speed of light if you're really, really far away from it. So when
Mm.
when
Mm.
scientists first discovered that these ejecta coming out of black holes were going faster than the speed of light, they realized that
Mm.
Einstein had to be wrong or their calculations or observations were wrong. But this galaxy clock
Can you
model,
mention?
say that again?
Can you quickly mention about Tesla proved that radio waves travel at the speed of light times phi? That was when I first read that on your site. I was amazed. Does that all fit in that Einstein sort of got it wrong, but he because he didn't apply the science of the golden ratio to
Well, what
physics?
Tesla did is he did something very similar to my clock, and it's right here in this patent. This article goes into Tesla's faster than light experiment, where the he got a radio wave to travel it. Here it is, patent number 787,412, filed May 16th, 1900. With a current, his transmitter passed over the Earth's surface with a speed of 292, 830 miles per second. So if I
Which is
take
the speed of light times phi. Is that the speed of light
really
times
close,
phi? Okay.
it's really
Yeah.
close. So I take 292, 830 divided by 186, 282. It's 1.5719 times the speed of light. But
Very close.
you
Yeah.
see how, remember, that's really close to the human skull ratio. That's
That's right.
incredibly
Yes.
close. And in fact, if you take one side of the Great Pyramid, so its height to one side base, and that's in Peter I. Missouri's book right here, it's 1 to
Yeah.
1.57 or 8, actually. That's just one
Yeah.
side.
I've got that. I've also got it behind me as well. It's a Bible for many students. I recommend everyone get that book. Yeah.
Yeah, here's the
The
west side, the
authority.
north side. Yeah, so if you take these dimensions on a single side of the Great Pyramid, which is in 2 dimensions, you get a number like what Tesla has here, right? And again, I also challenge at Tesla's time the accuracy of measuring the speed of light in his experiment, how accurate would be
Yeah.
compared to today. But basically, he's within the ratio of the golden ratio, and that's exactly what my clock that Tesla gave me after death did. The same thing is
Mm.
his actual experiment. And the way he does the experiment is he takes the earth frequency and he puts a coil on the earth and it's timed perfectly. It's an incredibly timed So it's kind of like
Mm.
if you have a sine wave going like this, it's like of the Earth, you're pushing it down from the top because
Yeah.
your forces are counter rotating, impeding upon each other. So the longitudinal, or what's known as the Tesla wave, goes proportionally faster than the speed of light, and this is documented. So it's
This
really
changes
well
everything.
explained.
So can we conclude and say that the golden ratio really is the key to all the future sciences? Is like, do we have to use our understanding of the living maths of nature to get a realistic picture of the cosmos? Is the golden ratio pretty much the key to you?
Well, as long as we're not looking for it to be exactly 1 to 1.6180339,887 and continuing, we have to look at the data as we record it and then look at the perfection of that number. I mean, I'm going really far with the golden ratio right now. We'd have to do another episode together to focus on what my
Yeah.
newest work is using the golden ratio. But there is another study here. I'm just looking for it right now in a document where we compare the I'm almost there. I've almost got it. When we compare the speed of sound, okay, here's a good graphic. This is a really good image to show here because this is not in Lemaire's book. So if we take a golden rectangle and again, we make our pyramid out of the center line, the angle
Yeah.
on these corners at the bottom, left and right,
Mm.
is pyramid angle. But
What's
then
amazing is I've never seen that diagram. I've studied this for 40 years and I have never seen that diagram. Is that your own research or you
this is
found
my own
that
research.
diagram?
Yeah, in fact, if I get my protractor up, and again, you can do
That's
this
amazing. See,
exactly.
that's original. That's what I call original work.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
actually never seen this either. Never seen anybody do it. Yeah, it's 51
no.
degrees and just a shaving
We
under
keep
50
so that's the
degrees.
beauty. We keep discovering. That's what I love. That's what I say I'm following the breadcrumbs because we keep discovering more and more. Keep going
Now,
with the
the
pyramids.
Shroud of Oviedo, which are the shroud, it's a very famous shroud that contains the blood of Christ, and whoever designed this cloth is incredibly close because the shroud is stated to be 84 by 53 centimeters, which is a ratio of 1 to 1.5849 or 98% of
Mm,
exact golden ratio. So
very close.
again,
Yeah.
it's that same number in the ratio of what
Hmm.
Tesla's increase in the speed of light is, which really interests me. But let me go forward here to so that's the study on the human skull. And here we go. It was on human species. They coincided 1 to 1.64 plus or minus 0.04, and 1.57 plus or minus 0.1. Approximate
Yeah.
phi. I don't like the word approximate because approximate makes it sound like
It's
it's
off a bit or something.
inadequate, but it's not a
Yeah.
very good word to describe this because also you can see the angle on human DNA spirals is also within the
Yeah.
pyramid angle, 51 degrees and 50
Right.
minutes. So, but if
Yeah.
you keep going, look at this. The golden ratio
Mm,
revealed in the speed of sound waves. So sound moves faster in water, more or less, depending on the temperature and the ocean depth, than air by about 340 meters per second because the mechanics of the properties of water differ from air. So when we look at, if we take the approximation of the speed of sound in the air, sound travels at 340 meters per second times the golden ratio cubed equals
yeah.
4.236, right? So that means that the ratio of sound in air to water is is again a function of the golden ratio, right?
Right.
So that means you can have the golden ratio squared and you can have the golden ratio cubed, right?
That's
Which
right.
again I found really fascinating, right? So
Mm.
here it is right
I've got
here.
a chart. I've I've got a chart here. Go on.
Yeah. So yeah, show me.
I've got a chart here of all the powers of fire. It's a big chart, but
Hmm.
if we start here, multiply by 1.618, we get 2.618, 4.236. It's phi cubed, 450. It's like a stairway to heaven. But we can also go the other way. If we keep multiplying by the reciprocal 0.618, we go from 1, we go to 0.618, 0.381. That's the number you talked about, 0.381. 0.236, 0.145. So what I love about the powers of phi is that I believe this is the symbol for the Caduceus symbol, the future in healing using frequency, and this correct mathematics must be based on phi. And I wanted to talk about, we've only got 5 minutes left, but I wanted to show a few more. I want to share the screen and show what happens when we get two golden spirals and merge the centers together.
That's
So I just
incredible.
wanted
No,
to,
that's
so
incredible.
I'll just share the screen just to close. I wanted to finish, come to the conclusion that the golden ratio somehow relates to love, the origin for the symbol of love, this eye of the spiral, the eye of God. What would you, what's so special about this mystical point here where the two counter-rotating fields somehow converge?
Oh,
I think they're
it's real,
counter-rotating.
and of course that's going to continue and continue and continue infinitely, and it's going to.
Are infinitely small, and also if we go the other way, it goes infinitely large. So what I think this is saying is that the union of the micro and the macro converges onto, say, the torus symbol, which
Right.
would be like a multi-dimensional aspect of what's going on here, I would imagine. So that's
Mhm.
explosion. Then we got the implosion. But would implosion be the key to all the future sciences? Is that what we're tapping into?
Well, they both react to each other. Like it's a reaction. So an explosion will then beget an implosion, like a pulse. And that's due to the
Right,
resistance of what the exploding force encounters resistance, which then forces it back in upon itself. And it creates
right,
this rhythm like the human heartbeat. And actually the sound of our sun produces that same actual heartbeat rhythm, and is
mm,
I believe the missing element in nuclear fusion is actually that rhythmic pulse that the sun produces. With the outward
right,
going wave of the sun encounters the super cold minus 270 degrees temperature of space, which then shocks the heat back in upon itself, which is the
right,
implosion wave, which crushes the nuclear fuel to form fusion, which then creates an outward
right,
going wave, which hits the cold background, which then shocks it
right,
back in again. So we can't explode outward infinitely without this pulse, because when the pulse
right.
compounds, it then becomes more and more radiant, going, further and further into expansion fields.
Talking about radiance with the solar, you remind me of the footage from the Voyager when they filmed this, when they took probes and got footage of the sun. We always thought the sun was just radiant, exploding, but on closer inspection of the footage, scientists found that it was actually imploding as well, like that torus. That the
Right, it's
sun just,
imploding and exploding, and that that
yeah,
data is in the sound waves of the sun rather than
all
just
right.
looking at the radiance of the light itself.
So
So there's a pulse.
that infinitely repeating 24 pattern of the Fibonacci sequence, there's the 24 numbers that add up to 108, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3. So I decided to make them like discs. So I'm playing with the idea of making that into an antenna. It's a phi antenna based on the infinitely repeating 24 code.
Oh, that's a
And
brilliant
we can add,
idea. Wow, that's a brilliant
yeah,
idea.
so I wanted to share that with you, but I've got so many ideas like I want to share with you. So I think we're going to have another one. But could you close, if I'll stop share, can you close with something fantastic like about the sound of the sun that we can
Well,
access
this
from your
is this
website?
is water. This was an experiment I designed. The photograph on the right is taken of Russian tap water. That's before on the left, and after being exposed to NASA's recording of the sound of the sun, which they had to speed up because it's inaudible. because the wavelengths are too
Mm.
long and the frequency too low. And it's really beautiful when you zoom in on the central crystal. This is a low res version of the photo. I have to find my high res version. But it
That's
restructured
beautiful.
water more brilliant, in fact, than anything I'd ever seen in the Masaru Emoto effect. So people use my coil
Mm.
systems primarily using the sound of the sun, the frequencies of the planets, and golden ratio brainwave tuning, and all sorts of frequencies that I have to reharmonize the fields in their home and their healing spaces. So this really demonstrates really well
Well,
how
mm.
powerful, but I've gone really deep into the magnetic properties of the sound of the sun, and I think it's the missing link to nuclear fusion. So yeah, let me just
When
yeah, you got one more thing you're going to show?
just just while we're looking at what that reminds me of, your diagram reminds me of if we think of DNA as a double counter-rotating coil, and we're walking up a spiral staircase and we stop and say we're going to slice the staircase and look at the information, we see a golden rectangle there, the double heat hydrogen bond, the zipper, whatever it's called. We've got hexagons and pentagons. So it's interesting that snowflake pattern that you just showed with the hexagon, and we saw before that DNA, we saw before that water has the property of a, when it's restructured, it's got the pent, and now you're showing the hex. So that's another thing I'd like to investigate, this pentahexa relationship of DNA, that everything you're doing is really allowing us to access the memory in our DNA. Is the DNA like a radio, an aerial? Like we are the aerial, basically. If
Oh yeah,
DNA is pentahexa,
we are so harmonic. The thing is about human beings is we forgot how to tune the human instrument, like the ancient Greeks, the Pythagoreans taught that we are a musical humana, a human instrument, and when you tune
yes,
it, your whole experience in reality opens up to
mm,
the natural harmonies and rhythms of the universe, and you experience that. But we become highly detuned beings because of all the chaotic frequencies we're around. So my work is teaching people using my coils and staffs and systems to properly tune the human being. And your idea for that antenna, I'd love to, that's a brilliant
I'll send you
idea.
the note.
That might
I'm
be a
fascinated
very
by it.
powerful. I would know how to power something like that. So we could talk about that later. But
Yeah.
anyway, so I'll
Well, I
stop
think we have to
recording
have
here.
another session.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
well,
we'll obviously do it. We can always do another session or two or three. Just keep chatting and sharing our experiences. But can you tell us, how can people access your website? We'll close on, how can people contact you and get these Lightstream harmonics and the sound, the recording of the sound of the sun, which is something I need to get myself.
yeah, I'll send that to you. So my website is my name. It's davidsereda.co. You can see it up here on the top. And these are my new
Yeah,
49 pointed super coils. So we have wands, which is what we started with, these beautiful wand systems that are built using real tourmaline and ruby and gem
mm,
crystals in the core. And then, without going into too much detail, people can explore this. These are my new supercoil systems, which
yeah,
have bases on aluminum. This is a 28 pointed star system coil, and these are the new 49s. And of course, I have the 14-inch ones, the 14 pointed ones, and I have
yeah,
beds that people
yeah,
can lay on to get frequency treated. These are they start very affordably. These coils are made into these canvas packs and they go under a mattress. And this is what I mean about tuning the human instrument, right? So,
yeah. And
of course,
crystals
the
are a big
staffs,
part of your work.
yeah,
And the crystals are a big part of your work.
the
Just
crystals are a
before
huge
you,
part of it. Of course, these are the scepters, which you now have.
yeah,
These are
this is one
incredibly
of them.
powerful in meditation. They're incredibly
So
powerful.
I've fallen in love with the ruby here. That you sent me um, this ruby stone. But I found out that ruby. You were saying in a private chat that um, the main element in ruby, which is used in the high end physics, is chromium, and that chromium on the atomic table or its number is 24 because I'm doing a big deep dive on the number 24, but it links up to chromium in the periodic table 24 and ruby, you were saying.
Well,
So
rubies
I love your
are aluminum oxide, aluminum to oxide. And again, there's a long formula for them. Not all rubies are and chromium. There it is, chromium.
chromium, yeah.
Al2O3 chromium. Yes, so that's
Super.
what a ruby is. In fact, I may as well just show this in the
Yeah,
closing
show that.
statement. And yes, there's a documentary where in the jungles of India, these shaman were curing people of all sorts of cancers using ruby. So it's really the ruby
Mm,
energy. The when you activate
yeah.
a gem in an energy field and you pulse it with piezoelectric energy,
Mm,
the ruby will give off its energy, which will enter your biofield, which is stimulates healing. So I have a lot of stuff on my website, but people can check it out there and they can write me. And thank you very much
And
for today, Jane. I
David,
can't wait to do part two with
yeah,
you.
yeah, anytime we'll probably try next week. But David also has so many amazing videos. Every time I watch one of David's videos, I keep taking notes. Even though I've researched for 40 years, there's so much that David delivers. So I would advise everyone to get on his website and just listen and learn, and give thanks to this amazing life that we have. Because I think there's big changes coming in, and to cope with all the changes, we really need to prepare ourselves with healing and connecting back to the earth and to crystals and to our higher self. So thank you for all that you do, David. Really appreciate it. Thank
Thank
you.
you for what you do, Jane. I'm so grateful to learn from you too. For perspective, in fact, your name 108 is an octave of 432 because 108 times 2 is 216 times 2 is
Mm,
432. And of course, there's a much deeper understanding of the number 108, which is the core of your name. So
yeah.